If you're reading through the book of Job on a daily basis, today you'd be reading chapters 25 through chapter 30. And in chapter 29 and chapter 30, we hear part of what's Job's final defense of his integrity. Remember, to this point, he's been dealing with his so-called friends who have been arguing with him and more vociferously as they go along that he must have done something wrong. He must have sinned to have such tragedy befall him. And in chapter 29 and chapter 30, he really asserts and tries to defend himself by talking about all that he had done in living a good life and a life of faith. And chapter 29 begins with him looking back and saying, "Oh, that I were as in the months of old, as in the days when God watched over me." And he goes on to describe his friendship with God and how the Almighty was with him and his children were around him. And when he was a respected member of the community and people wanted to hear his advice, and he talks about how he treated the least of these. And our verses for the day are from chapter 29, verses 15 and 16, when in part of describing his life of compassion and justice and generosity, he said, "I was eyes to the blind and feet to the lame. I was a father to the needy, and I championed the cause of the stranger." And again, these are things that throughout the Bible we hear are the marks of a righteous, faithful person. To care for those who are physically in need, the blind, the lamed, the deaf. I was a father to the needy, meaning he helped provide for them and care for them. And he was a champion for the cause of the stranger, because so often people can be so rude or uncaring or indifferent or even hateful to those who are strangers in their midst or new to a community. So Job is asserting in his defense, I did everything that God called me to do, that everything that God calls us to do as people of faith, and yet I have suffered so grievously. And in chapter 30, he goes on to describe just how hard his life is now when he has lost so much and God seems so distant or absent. Perhaps you can think of a time in your life. For someone listening, it might even be right now in the present, when you may feel a little bit like Job, that you can look back in the past and see days when your health was better, when your family relationships perhaps were stronger, when you had friends around you, when you were respected, when you had meaning and purpose or coherence and significance in your life, and now you feel perhaps those things are absent or lacking, and it's hard and it's painful. Well, like Job, I pray that even in the midst of trials, that you will hold tenaciously to your faith and believe that one day God's presence will be more real and more vital in your life, and that God will speak to you. Hang in there.